Everyone thought Janelle Brown's next move would finally be the moment everything clicked. But when her latest announcement hit social media, it didn't feel empowering. It felt confusing because the timing was too perfect, the wording was too careful, and the reaction from fans was anything but supportive. And as the comments exploded, it became clear this wasn't just a business launch. It was a test of credibility, trust, and whether Janelle is truly ready for her second chapter, or if this is another carefully framed pivot that doesn't match what we just watched unfold on screen. Stay with me, because once you see how deep this goes, you'll understand why fans are so divided right now. Janelle Brown has reached a moment that feels quiet on the surface, but explosive underneath. Because when she shared that simple message saying, "You may know me from TLC Sister Wives, and I have finally been able to bring to fruition a project I have been thinking about for a long time," it landed differently than she may have expected, because nothing about Janelle exists in isolation anymore. Not after years of watching her navigate a complicated marriage, not after watching her slowly choose independence, not after seeing her sit across from Cody in that recent episode where honesty was promised but resolution never fully arrived. And that is why this announcement immediately sparked conversation, because viewers were not just reacting to a business launch, they were reacting to timing, context, and emotional residue built over seasons of watching her story unfold in real time for more than a decade. And when fans saw the words second chapter coaching, they did not just see a brand name, they saw a claim, a statement that suggests growth, reflection, and readiness to guide others. And that is where curiosity turned into scrutiny, because just days earlier, audiences watched Janelle in a moment that many hoped would mark a turning point, where she would finally speak plainly, hold firm, and demand accountability. And instead, what they saw felt familiar, measured, careful, and restrained. And for some, that restraint read as maturity, while for others, it felt like another moment of self-silencing. And that divide now shapes how this new venture is being received, because coaching implies clarity, and people want to know where that clarity is coming from and how it was earned. And Janelle describes this project as helping women remember parts of themselves they have ignored for years, which resonates deeply with anyone who has ever put themselves last. But resonance alone is not enough for an audience that has invested years into watching the gaps between intention and action. And this is where the story becomes layered, because Janelle is not wrong in what she is saying. Many women do lose themselves in roles, expectations, and survival. But viewers are asking whether she has fully reclaimed those parts herself yet, or whether she is still in the process. And that question matters, because guidance carries responsibility, and when the guide is still walking the path, audiences want transparency, not perfection, but honesty about where someone truly stands. And the conversation deepens when Miri enters the picture, offering public support and sharing a message about starting again from experience, which signals unity, growth, and perhaps a shared direction. And for some viewers, that moment felt hopeful, a sign that old wounds are healing and that former sister wives are finding solidarity beyond the structure that once defined them. But for others, it raised another set of questions about strategy, alignment, and the optics of partnership, because two recognizable faces together create strength, credibility, and reach. And that does not automatically mean inauthenticity, but it does invite analysis, especially in a media landscape where personal growth is often packaged as product, and audiences have become skilled at reading between the lines. And then memory enters the room, because viewers remember Strive with Janelle, the lifestyle brand that promised wellness, balance, and motivation, but struggled to maintain momentum and consistency. And that history has not been erased, because digital footprints linger, and trust, once tested, does not reset easily. And now people are asking, what is different this time? What has changed beyond the title and the audience? Because life coaching implies clarity, and people want to know where that clarity is coming from and how it was earned. Is not content creation. It is not occasional inspiration. It requires structure, commitment, and clarity. And so far, much of what has been shared feels broad and aspirational rather than specific and grounded. And that vagueness leaves space for doubt. especially when paired with unresolved emotions from recent episodes and speculation about timing, contracts, and whether this project has been waiting behind the scenes for the right moment to emerge. And while none of that is confirmed, the coincidence fuels conversation because reality television has trained audiences to look for narrative alignment, and when a major life pivot coincides perfectly with a season finale, people notice. And then there is the emotional layer that often goes unspoken, how this shift lands within her family, how it feels for her children who lived through the years she now reflects on. And while being a devoted parent and being a guide are not mutually exclusive, the public nature of this transition invites examination because the brand is not abstract, it's deeply personal, and audiences who watched her minimize her needs for years are now being asked to see her as a voice of empowerment, and that requires a bridge, a story of transition that has not yet been fully told. And even the branding itself feels safe, universal, and intentionally broad, which may be smart from a business perspective, but does little to distinguish this chapter as uniquely hers. And viewers who followed her for years want specificity. They want lived detail. They want to see how the lessons were learned, not just hear that they exist. And so the reaction unfolds not as random negativity, but as collective questioning from people who feel invested and uncertain at the same time. And that uncertainty becomes the engine driving attention because people are not disengaging. They are watching more closely than ever, waiting to see whether this second chapter will be written with depth and consistency or whether it will struggle under the weight of expectations built over years of watching her story unfold. And that tension, unresolved and quietly powerful, is what keeps this moment alive, because everyone senses that what happens next will determine how this chapter is remembered, and whether it truly marks a turning point or simply another pause in a journey still very much in progress. The reaction did not slow down, it accelerated, and once the comments started rolling, they revealed something deeper than simple criticism, because this was not coming from outsiders looking to provoke, but from longtime viewers who had supported Janelle, defended her, empathized with her, and waited patiently for what they believed would be her moment of full emergence. And that is why the tone felt heavier, because disappointment from supporters always lands louder than negativity from strangers. And one of the most repeated questions, echoed again and again across platforms, what exactly is she qualified to coach? And that question was not asked with cruelty, but with genuine confusion, because audiences have watched her for years struggle with boundaries, avoid confrontation, and prioritize stability over self-expression. And suddenly, she is positioned as someone who can guide others toward reclaiming their voices. And for many viewers, that leap felt premature, because they are still watching her find her own. And the comments reflected that tension, with people pointing out her habit of ending thoughts with uncertainty, something that once felt relatable, thoughtful, even endearing, but now felt misaligned with the role of a coach, where people seek direction, grounding, and clarity. And that shift in perception is significant because it highlights how context changes meaning. The same traits that made her likable as a reality television figure now raise concerns when reframed as professional guidance. And another theme emerged, admiration paired with limits. Viewers saying they loved her story, but would not seek life advice from any of the wives. And that sentiment spread quickly because it captured the emotional boundary many were feeling. They could appreciate the journey without endorsing the authority. And that distinction matters because it speaks to a broader fatigue with celebrity-led wellness movements, where personal survival is treated as universal expertise, and audiences are increasingly cautious about where they place trust, especially when money, guidance, and vulnerability are involved. And then, the past resurfaced, more forcefully as people began sharing reminders of Strive with Janelle, comparing old posts to new announcements, questioning consistency, follow-through, and depth. And while growth is possible, the internet rarely forgets, and viewers want evidence that lessons have been learned and applied, not just rebranded. And that skepticism intensified because of the unresolved feelings surrounding her recent interaction with Cody, where many hoped to see a firmer stance. And when that did not happen, it left an emotional gap. And now this coaching venture is landing directly in that gap, creating a sense of misalignment that people cannot ignore. And then speculation took hold. Theories about influence behind the scenes, about timing aligned with contracts and public image, about whether this was encouraged strategically. And while none of it is verified, the fact that these theories are circulating speaks to the erosion of trust, because when transparency feels incomplete, people fill in the blanks themselves. And the supportive comments that did appear struggled to gain traction, not because they were insincere, but because they did not engage with the questions people were actually asking. They offered encouragement without addressing substance, and that imbalance made the criticism feel overwhelming, even if it was not universal. And through all of this, one emotion keeps surfacing: disillusionment. Viewers wanted to see empowerment demonstrated before it was marketed. They wanted to watch her stand fully in her truth before being invited to follow. And that desire speaks to how deeply invested the audience still is, because disengagement would be easier than disappointment. But they are not disengaging. They are paying closer attention, scrutinizing more deeply, and waiting to see whether actions will align with words, because words alone no longer satisfy. And this moment exists alongside another storyline that reignited strong reactions: the apology scene involving Christine, David, and Cody, which many viewed as performative, confusing, and emotionally unresolved. And that parallel matters because it reinforces a pattern viewers are responding to across the series: avoidance, reframing, delayed accountability. And when those patterns repeat, skepticism spreads beyond individual actions to the entire narrative. And so this coaching announcement becomes more than a business move. It becomes a test of credibility, readiness, and follow-through. And that is why the conversation feels so charged, because people are not rooting for failure, they are waiting for proof, waiting to see whether this second chapter will unfold with honesty, consistency, and depth, or whether it will fade under the weight of expectations shaped by years of watching her journey in real time. And that uncertainty, unresolved and quietly intense, is what keeps people watching, commenting, and engaging, because the story is not finished, and everyone senses that what happens next will determine whether this moment becomes a turning point or another example of potential paused just short of transformation. So the real question isn't whether Janelle can start a second chapter, it's whether she's ready to live it out loud. Because words and branding are easy, but consistency, accountability, and growth are what people actually believe in. And right now, fans aren't rooting against her, they're waiting to see if this moment becomes real change, or just another pause in a story that still feels